Getting ready to take on spring? Make your first move with the reliable performance and power of Steel battery tools. From hedge trimmers and mowers to string trimmers and more, right now you can save $50 on select battery tool sets. Real Steel. Offer valid on select AK system sets through June 16, 2024. See participating retailer for details.
Hey, it's Will Friedle.
And Sabrina Bryan.
And we're the hosts of the new podcast, Magical Rewind.
You may know us from some of your favorite childhood TV movies like My Date with the President's Daughter
and the Cheetah Girls movies.
Together, we're sitting down to watch all the movies you grew up with and chat with some of your favorite stars and crew that made these iconic movies happen.
So kick back, grab your popcorn, and join us. Listen to Magical Rewind on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. Brought to you by State Farm. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.
It's time for a Big Blue Kickoff Live.
Nobody can ever tell you that you couldn't do it because you did.
On Giants.com.
You know what I saw? New York Giant Prime.
And the Giants mobile app.
17-14 is the final. One touchdown, we are world champions. Believe it, and it will happen.
Part of the Giants Podcast Network.
Let's go out there like a bunch of crazy dogs. Have some fun.
Hello, everybody, and happy Friday, our last Friday of the off-season. I am John Schmeelk, joined by Paul Dottino on Big Blue Kickoff Live, presented by Cadillac, the official luxury vehicle of the New York Football Giants. And, Paul, we're going to be joined for our final opponent preview by Mickey Spagnola from DallasCowboys.com. He'll be with us in a couple of minutes. But we've been through what's a long off-season, but tends to go very quickly. And I feel like we've blinked, and the off-season is over. And the players arrive next Tuesday, first practice on Wednesday, and then we're rocking and rolling, my friend.
It was an eventful offseason, John, because of the free agency news that obviously we had to deal with. The high pick, once again, we were in the top 10, so that really occupied a lot of our attention. And then, you know, when the rookies get here, then that's a whole hullabaloo, too, because you can't wait to see these guys who you pick so high, or your team picks so high, and you want to see what they're doing. So, yeah, we had a lot of things to keep us going. And then, of course, there was Hard Knocks. We had the cameras all over the place for a lot of the months, too.
Now, here's the thing. Did you really notice the cameras?
Not the cameras as much as the crew.
Yeah,
the crew, I was around the crew a lot. We'd always say hello, and they'd always say hi back.
Wait, but you see them like only at lunch. Otherwise, they'd just be in their room looking at their monitors. They didn't interact with us a whole ton.
Not much, but I kind of felt their presence. I would say that. But hey, here's what I will say. Okay, I will say this. They were nice people. They were not intrusive. When I tell you that I noticed them, I don't want to make it sound like they were, causing a problem or that they were interference. They were not. But I did notice they were there, and they were nice people. I got along with all of them. But it just gave you a shortened sense of the off season, I think, with all of the activity that was around here during the first 6 months of the year. At least that's how I felt.
Yeah, I'm with you. I honestly, I didn't notice so much. It's not like they had guys walking around with cameras. It was much more of the robotic camera deal than it was guys walking around. And a lot of the walk-around stuff, Pearson, you could probably speak to this better than me. Like, they had a lot of the stuff where guys needed cameras to walk around. They just had our guys shoot it, and we would give them the footage, right?
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah,
the only time I really saw them was when we first had the OTA practices and stuff. Everything else, I feel like, was upstairs.
Yeah.
The mini-camp.
They were not intrusive. They were not.
And they had the drone shots working during the OTA practices, too, which was fun.
That was cool.
Yeah.
That was cool.
We haven't seen that yet, so we'll see maybe the next show or the final show whether or not those start getting out. And again, we'll have Mickey Spagnola at some point. We're trying to get him on the line. I think he told me he's in Boston this week for some reason. Before I think, guys, he has to go out to Oxnard. I imagine the Cowboys usually start out in Oxnard in California, right? So that'll be next week. But some teams have already started reporting, Paul, in terms of to play the Hall of Fame game and things like that. Rookies are here for the Giants. Theo Johnson put on the PUP list with that hip flexor. And folks, just to make it clear about how the rules for PUP work, Theo Johnson can come off that at any time. He can come off tomorrow. He can come off in 4 weeks. He can come off in 5 weeks, 3 weeks, 2 weeks, whatever. If they wanted to, and there's no indication it's this serious where you have to consider this, you can always start the season on PUP as well. It's to save yourself a roster spot. Again, no indication that's going to be the case for Theo Johnson, but this does not at all indicate a long-term issue here. He could be back soon. Until we hear from Brian Dable next Wednesday, we won't have a really good feel for exactly what's going on there.
Well, I think at lunch, just before we started the show, John and I kind of bantered this about, and I said, hey, they put him on earlier this week. There's nothing but meetings going on for rookies this week anyway, really, is what it comes down to.
Correct.
And then next week, the first practice is helmets, shirts, and shorts on Wednesday. And they're not actually doing anything padded-wise or of any real significance until the weekend, after the weekend's over. So the truth of the matter is, so he's on PUP this week. He's not missing anything. If he's on PUP next week, he's really not missing anything. So if you're going to miss 2 weeks, these are the 2 weeks to miss.
Yeah, but you don't want a rookie at any position to miss anything.
You would hate him to miss any of the stuff on the field because he's still allowed to do everything else in here.
Correct.
So it's not that big a deal now.
Oh, no, I'm not saying it's a big deal, but especially rookie tight ends, which is, I think,
I'm just glad he's here.
The toughest wide position to, quickly adjust to the NFL going from college. You want him on the field as much as you can early.
I understood. I'm just simply glad that it's not so significant that they're immediately worried about long term.
Yeah.
Or for that matter, that it was something so bad that he had to go get a second opinion on it, or maybe he requires surgery. It doesn't seem like it's anything like that. That would now make me feel like, oh, geez, they drafted this kid. He's got a lot of potential. Love to see him do something.
Waller retires.
But now what are we going to do?
Yeah.
That would be devastating. But that doesn't appear to be the case at all.
No, I'm with you on that. I think that makes a lot of sense. 201-939-4513. I'll open up the phones here, folks. Give us a call right here on Big Blue Kickoff Live on Giants.com, Giants mobile app, 201-939-4513. So I know you talked about this with SciTac a little bit yesterday. What's been what's kind of front of mind for you as we head towards training camp next week? What's like the first thing that you're thinking about and is kind of, top of mind?
Well, John, I think right now, for the first few days of camp, I'm going to be looking at the secondary. More so than even the offensive line because they don't get the pads on. Again, I think is it Monday after the first day of practice?
I can check that.
Is it like the 28th or 29th?
I can tell you when the first day of padded practice is. Just give me, I got to look.
I know. It's not through, I think the first 4 days, or maybe even the first 5 days, first 4, I'm pretty sure, they do not have full contact practice. And keeping that in mind, I can't really get much out of that in the trenches. So what can I look at the first few days of practice when they're in shorts and shells? I can look at the receivers and I can look at the defensive backs. That's what I'm really going to be focused in on the first couple of days.
So just helmets Wednesday, Thursday, shells on Friday, shells on Saturday,
pads on Monday,
Sunday
right?
off, Monday pads.
There you go. So until that day, how are we supposed to evaluate the trenches?
No, you can't.
You can't.
No, they're basically OTA
So I'm going to
practices.
start out looking at the receivers against the DBs, and then we will get into the other positions for me.
No, I'm 1,000% with you. And we'll get into more of the preview of the stuff next week. And by the way, starting next week, I'll do this at the start of the show. Start time for BBK next week is 1 o'clock, not 12:30, and that's going to be for most of August. The last week of August might switch back a little bit, depending on, we haven't seen exactly what the timing of practices are going to be after that second preseason game, I guess it would be. So we haven't seen that yet. So once we do, we'll figure out exactly when those shows will be. But between Monday through, I think it's whatever the week is before that second preseason game, we will be from 1 to 2, which every day will be after practice and after media availability. So we're going to do a quick video for some of our social platforms on practice, recaps and such. But otherwise, Big Blue Kickoff, folks, if you want to know what happened at practice, this is where you go. This is going to be our daily news. This is what people said. This is, what happened at practice. How do we analyze and evaluate that? That's what Big Blue Kickoff Live is going to be in August. So that, to me, guys, that's going to be your go-to show. We're going to have stuff going up on Giants Huddle as well. National media people here are going to be here. We'll talk to them. I always have Paul talk to some of the alumni when they're here too, doing the autographs and stuff like that. We'll do that again. But if you want to know what's happening at training camp, daily at practice, This is the show. Stay tuned. Every day, 1 o'clock, we'll have everything for you.
It was really nice of Dable to work his schedule around us.
No, we worked our schedule around him. What are you talking about?
Oh, no, in all honesty.
And I imagine the regular season schedule will be back to 12:30 if his regular season schedule remains the same.
See, because, and you guys know because you've already looked at the ticket applications for practice. In fact, Pearson, do we know, did they sell out the tickets that they put up yesterday?
I would imagine they did, but I can check that.
Okay. So, on the practice schedule you guys see on Giants.com, what you'll notice is that 10 o'clock, it's consistent. 10 o'clock, we'll have Dable before practice, 10 o'clock practice, media avails afterwards.
There's one afternoon practice.
Yeah,
that's
it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he really, we've seen over the last some years now, there have been some variable afternoons, maybe even early evening. No, this is 10 o'clock pretty much the first couple of weeks. That's what it is. So I like that. I like the consistency myself.
No, it makes it easier for sure. Let's see. They said check back at 2 p.m. today for limited drops. I don't know if they're sold out, but go to Giants.com/training camp. You can at least check it out to see if there are any tickets left. I'm going to the website right now, and I don't know. I'm not going to click through all this. So, but they do have announced some Giants legends that are going to be there, and those are on the website. So I'm not going to go through every day or anything, but O.J. Anderson, Richie Seibert, Stephen Baker, Pepper Johnson, Casillas, Charles Way, Sean Landetta, Ahmad Bradshaw, Brian Kelly, Kareem McKenzie, Chris Snee, Jay Alford, Henry Hinoski, Feegs, Cross, Brandon Short, Jesse Armstead, O'Hara, Nix, Grant, Rodney Hampton, Otis Anderson, Corey Webster, Joe Morris, Amani Toomer, George Martin, Rodney Hampton, Gary Reason. So those are the guys that'll be here. If you want to try to schedule your day to match up with one of these specific players for autographs, to keep in mind, autographs are just for kids. Just keep that in mind, folks.
Not for the alums.
The
alums can sign for adults.
The current players are just for kids. Current players are just for kids. Thank you for that clarification, Paul. And the alumni can get autographs from everybody. So make sure you go check that out at Giants.com/training camp. All right, we're still waiting on Mickey Spagnola. Hopefully he will take a second from his little vacation and have a chance to give us a call. In the meantime,
how dare he take vacation?
Mickey's the best. He never misses for us. This is surprising. Let's go to the phones at 201-939-4513. Don't forget, guys, Giants Huddle Podcast. We got a lot of great stuff up there right now. We have our position series. I think cornerback is going up today, if it's not up already. We have inside linebackers, off-ball linebackers, edge, and defensive tackle up there. Go check that out on the Giants Huddle Podcast, Giants.com/podcast, Giants app, or just search for Giants Huddle on your favorite podcast platform.
How many corners did you get? Did you get them all? There's a bunch of them.
No, I didn't do all of them. I did 6.
6, pretty good. Yeah. That's a pretty good number.
We did not.
There's a lot of them.
Yeah, we did. See if I can remember all the guys that we did.
Banks,
Hawkins, Flott, Hawkins,
David Long Jr.
Okay. We did not do Darnay because we talked to him so much.
Phillips.
I did not do Aaron Robinson.
Drew Phillips.
Yeah, we did Drew Phillips. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see.
And Nick McLeod.
Those are the guys that we did.
Okay, hey, good crop.
Yep.
Yeah, there's a lot of
Drew Phillips was very impressive.
Yeah, Drew Phillips was very good.
A lot of contenders, guys.
So was Newman when we did
fighting
safeties.
like heck for the back of that depth chart.
Absolutely. Let's go to Ed in New Jersey. He's going to lead us off today. Ed, what's going on?
Hi. Watching Hard Knocks, Evan Neal wasn't mentioned at all, and he's so critical as he was that super low draft choice that really could have impacted the draft for many years. They didn't say he's working hard. They didn't say we've had a meeting with the new coach. They didn't say his footwork is improved. They didn't say his health is improved.
Yeah, but Ed, did they talk about any of their current players?
They don't have to. They don't have to. I mean, he's the lightning rod right now. He's the key. They don't have to talk about Andrew Thomas. They don't have to talk about the center. They have to talk about him because so many.
Have they talked about Cordell Flott, who's going to be one of the starting cornerbacks?
No, they did not.
No, again, I'm not trying to be combative or be wise. I'm just saying that this show has been about adding people in the draft and adding people in free agency. They're not evaluating the current players in the roster. No one's mentioned John Michael Schmitz. Kayvon Thibodeau has been barely mentioned.
That's because I think they think I'm just guessing
Well,
that he's on a good trajectory.
I'll go another step further beyond even what John is saying. You're talking about like 6 months, 5 months of film being cut down into 45-minute snippets. It's very unfair of you to say that nobody in this front office has talked about these players.
Well, and I think
obviously they have. They just aren't in the show because that's not the purpose of the show.
Yeah, and I think as we get further along here and they do some shows around spring practice and stuff, that could be a time when Evan Neal gets mentioned and
Much more likely.
and things like that. But remember, the tentpole events to start were the Combine, which is about the draft, Senior Bowl, and all that stuff was about the draft. Then you had the free agency show. So you really haven't had, aside from the Daniel Jones rehab, which they showed in episode 1, they really haven't done anything on the current roster. And there was it wasn't Evan Neal being mentioned directly, Ed, but do you remember what they said when they signed Jermaine Illuminor?
Right.
They said he might be right tackle.
They said starting left guard or starting right tackle. That is correct. So that should tell you all you need to know.
Right. So is that what you hear? I mean, that did not make me feel all that good, right?
Well, the guy's coming off ankle surgery. He had Neal had ankle surgery in January and did not do much in the spring.
At the point of that conversation, he had not done one thing on the field yet because he was still rehabbing from ankle surgery, so there really wouldn't be anything to say.
What would you want them to say at that point, honestly?
Well, I would like to say, they've mentioned guys before. He's been an All-Pro in the rehab room. I mean, I've heard them say that about people. They said that about Daniel Jones. Basically.
Again, that's not the point of those shows. The point of these shows are the bullets that John just talked about. I think if you watch the next, there's 2 more left.
2 left, yes.
Okay, maybe, just maybe, they'll mention Evan Neal in one of the last 2 shows to make you happy.
Yeah, I think, Ed, my point is that they really haven't mentioned any other players, good or bad, on the current roster. So I just wouldn't take much out of it. Look, I think when you talk about Evan Neal, Ed, it's pretty simple, right? They're going to give him a chance to keep that right tackle spot. He'll have to play well enough to keep it. If he does, great. If he doesn't, they have Jermaine Illuminor there as a backstop, and that's how you should view it.
I don't think they've mentioned Bobby Okereke once either, have they? I mean,
they don't have to.
They don't have to mention Evan Neal either.
Yes. Oh, yes.
Well, for you, I guess they do. We'll call a producer and let him know that you want to hear Evan Neal in the last 2 shows. Okay?
To me, the purpose of Hard Knocks, I mean, and the reason why, I mean, you could tell sort of through, the way I think Shane smiles through this, is a lot of it is really controlled messaging, to the outside world, because he said they have editorial control on the content, right? And if they want to get messages out in a way that best favors them, and I think they tried very hard to do that with the Saquon Barkley whole issue, they could get it out. And they've gotten no message out on this, through Evan Neal, and that just surprised me. You're right.
Well, Ed,
you're right. I have no data.
Right.
I have no data, right? And I know less about football when it comes to it. When Dable was talking with the quarterback, right, at the draft, right, I was just rolling my eyes, saying, it was like opening the eyes of a blind man, right?
No, look, Ed, look. I understand you're saying it's controlled messaging, but at the same time, the Giants don't tell them what to put in. What happens is that they'll edit the show together with the content they think is most compelling. They'll bring it to the Giants, and then the Giants will say, well, we don't want this in there, we don't want that in there,
for
take it out.
competitive reasons, we want to take that out.
But this isn't a deal where the Giants are going to say, all right, here's what we're going to do. We're going to have Brian Dable come in the room, and we're going to have him say good things about Evan Neal, and then we're going to tell NFL Films to put it in the show. That's not how this works.
Okay, anyway, I don't mean to take too much of your time.
No, it's all good.
Thank you so much. And you could understand why blah, 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 right? I'm a Giant ticket holder since 76, right? My kids and my great. You don't need to hear all that, right?
Oh, no, Ed, Ed, what?
Question.
Ed,
it's okay.
We all know, and it's no secret. I think in the Fact or Fiction that's coming out, or the cover 3 that's going up on the website on Monday, they ask, what's the first thing you're watching when you get to camp? And I wrote Evan Neal. That was my answer. So we know he's important. The people upstairs know he's important.
Got to find out first what he's allowed on the field, John.
In terms of editing the show together, the fact that he's not in there, I wouldn't take anything out of that. but it doesn't mean that he's not extremely important for how this season's going to go.
Heck, if he doesn't
Thank
work
you, Ed.
out,
Appreciate the call.
If he does not work out and they follow through with the Illuminor move, that means 2 spots have to get altered. The right tackle spot and the left guard spot. Do you honestly believe that the Giants want that to happen?
No.
Of course not.
No,
that's not appetizing.
But I think when you go back, and Sitek and I talked about this on the Hard Knocks reaction episode on the Giants Huddle podcast, go check that out too. They didn't quite specify who had him as their most important lineman to join to try to get him for agency, but someone, whether it was the pro personnel staff or the coaching staff, had Illuminor on the top of their list for linemen.
Joe mentioned he was at the top of the list and did not go any further.
Right.
So
he was on the
correct.
top of somebody's list.
Don't know who.
But I think it's because of the right tackle. And we talked about that, right? You needed, whether it was Michael Onwenu, which is another guy we talked about, or a guy like Illuminor, you needed somebody that could play guard or tackle, so you could start him at guard, or you have a backstop to Evan Neal. And that's why I think he was so important for them to bring in.
I would only say this. Illuminor has been effusive in his praise with Carmen Brasillo. I would assume.
Oh, yeah, he was with him in the
correct.
Yeah, correct.
He was with him with the Vegas Raiders.
And with the Patriots.
Mm-hmm. So I would assume that Brasillo was probably a very high advocate for him.
I imagine that was there's a good chance that's the list he was on top
right?
of.
I mean, I'm just saying, right?
Yes. The other thing, too, we haven't had an assistant coach mentioned by name either. I think they're trying to keep that, like, Jerome Henderson is the only one that I think we've really had, and Shea Tierney maybe a little bit.
And
in the
Bowen.
court, I guess so. Well,
Bowen, when talking about
Burns.
Burns.
Coordinators for sure. I mean, non-coordinator assistants. Because Jerome Henderson ran the DB.
Yeah, you know
at the
what?
combine.
I think you're right. I don't think I remember seeing any of the other assistants.
Not featured prominently.
Excuse me.
All right, now we welcome in our guest. He is Mickey Spagnola. He's been covering the Cowboys forever. I think that's the technical term. For DallasCowboys.com. Mickey, you got Schmeelk and Dottino up here in East Rutherford, New Jersey. When are you heading to Oxnard, my friend?
Tuesday, as a matter of fact. Heading out on the charter on Tuesday to Oxnard, and we'll be getting out of 95 to 100-degree heat in Dallas, so it's a welcome change.
Yeah, Oxnard's lovely. You're in Boston, you told me, right?
Yeah, I'm in Norwood, a suburb. Our daughter lives here with her husband, and we came up here for a few days, and then we just got back from Nova Scotia, took a trip up there for 5 days.
Very, very nice.
Oh, that sounds lovely. Well, we're all about to kind of dive back in head first into the pool that is the NFL season. These off seasons get shorter and shorter, Mickey. So I'm going to start with the big picture thing first before we dig into the X's and O's, which I know Paul likes to talk about. I've had trouble in my head figuring out how they're handling this Prescott thing, Dak Prescott's contract, and how it helps the team by just continuing to wait. And maybe it's driven by Dak's agent and not by the team. That could be possible, too. I don't know the answer to that. And then throw in CeeDee Lamb and Micah Parsons, McCarthy on the last year of his deal. There seems to be, I don't think chaos is the right word, but maybe uncertainty involving some very important players and people in the organization. Can you kind of take us behind the scenes a little bit and kind of tell us what's going on with kind of that group of guys and their contract situations?
Yeah, and let's start right here. I saw somebody do kind of a little survey, and they came up with no team in the NFL had 3 players at their position the highest paid players in the league. So when you're looking at Dak, you're looking at CD, and eventually Parsons, there's a chance all 3 could be the highest paid player at their position, correct?
Mm-hmm. And Zach Norton's not far behind the guard, by the way, either.
Right. And so you do got a salary cap, and you got to be able to manage these things. Now, as for Dak, everybody's like, well, you got to sign him. And it's like, okay, now how much does he want to sign for? Does he want 60, 65 million? No one has heard that yet.
Right.
So again, it's like, well, and you guys help me. I think you're all probably a little bit younger than I am, but at my age, I'd take less money to get it now than to wait and play a season that I don't have guaranteed money afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
And these guys are betting on themselves at this point.
Yeah.
The same thing with CD. Now, he's guaranteed $18 million, but it's a 1-year deal. So what is he asking for? Everybody saw what Justin Jefferson signed for, right? It was an average of $35 million a year.
Mm-hmm.
But if you look at the guarantees inside that number, it's really $30 million a year, and they can get out of it for very little dead money. So everybody says, well, okay, that's what you got to pay CeeDee Lamb. Well, what if his guy's asking for 40? And we don't know that. So we're assuming that 35 now is the basement, and they're going to say, and if I'm negotiating, I'd say I want 40 because I might end up with 37. But I don't want to just say, okay, I'll take 35. And then Cowboys go, well, no, what about 33? And then you compromise the 34. So it's a very difficult negotiation.
It is.
That's taken place, right? And then Micah, look, he's next year would be his 5th-year option that they already picked up, right? And so what's he asking for? And if he ends up playing on his 5th-year option, then you would go, well, okay, if I can't get him to a reasonable amount, I'll just franchise him the next year. And I believe it's like $24 million a year. And if he doesn't want, to get a long-term deal, I'll franchise him again. So I could actually stretch it out 3 years. Now, I'm not saying that's what the Cowboys are thinking, but I'm looking at it reasonably from a financial standpoint, because if I've got 3 guys on my team taking up $150 million of the salary cap, what kind of team am I going to put around them? And I think at some point, especially the quarterback, and I'm not saying he doesn't deserve whatever he can get, he's got to figure, okay, if I get all this, do I still have CeeDee Lamb for more than a year as my wide receiver? And what do I get to put around him on the offensive line? So, yeah, it's a really delicate thing that they're trying to balance here, and there hasn't been any movement. Now, when I left, a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, they sort of felt like that the CD thing was probably going to start moving a little bit. And that'll eventually get done, but is he going to sit out a year and say, nah, I'm not going to take that $18 million, right? Or is he going to also say, I'm going to bet on myself that I don't suffer a big injury, and then when I go into free agency after this coming year, I got no bargaining power because I suffered an injury that everybody's going, well, I don't know. We got to see. So the whole thing for the 3 players, it's a real delicate thing. It's like, they don't. I mean, it's not like they're being threatened by Parsons, or
right.
It seems like it. He hasn't, and I can't imagine CD's going to sit there and go, I got $18 million on the line, and I guess prorated, that's $1 million a year, a game, right? A week. Is he going to miss $3 million by holding out to try to get more? So again, the negotiations aren't all one side. Like, okay, Cowboys, sign them.
Yep.
They gotta agree to something, and you don't know what they're asking for.
Mickey, I almost hate to do this, but I got to go along the same lines. They acquired Trey Lance, a former number 1 pick from San Francisco last year. How much promise and faith do they have in him?
Who's also on the last year of his contract, by
yes,
the way.
Yes. And so how does that play into the Prescott situation, if at all? Because we've already seen how finances have crippled their running back spot. They got to bring Ezekiel Elliott back for 2.0 because they couldn't afford to pay any other running backs.
Well, and that's exactly right. They shouldn't have let him go last year. They should have brought him for 3.0 and brought him back because they sorely missed his ability to function in short yardage and close to the goal line. So for Trey Lance, they don't know. So that's what they're going to training camp for. They're going to see Trey Lance get a lot of snaps, and not just second team, third team, with the first team in practice. And I would imagine, at least for the first 2 preseason games, they're his. He's got to go out and prove he can play. And he just hasn't played any football, so you can't sit there and think, well, we're going to get real cute here. We got Trey Lance in our back pocket. Well, no one knows if he can play.
Mm-hmm.
He's played, I think he's appeared in 8 NFL games with San Francisco, started maybe 4. And if you go back to college, he only played 1 full year.
Yep.
1 full year, and he didn't play 4 years in high school either. So he hasn't played a lot of football. So their thoughts are right now, hey, he looks like an NFL quarterback. He's got an NFL quarterback arm. Good guys like him. But can he play? And that's what they got to be able to find out in a short period of time on if he can play. Can he play well enough to knock Cooper Rush off the backup job? Well, I don't know. And that's what they're going to see. And then, what does he do in preseason games that you say, well, maybe we sign him for the future backup and let's see what happens with Dak. But I don't think that they're going to try to get cute and hold Trey Lance as leverage against Dak signing whatever they think they can sign him to.
And Mickey, I promise we'll get into the X's and O's. I have one more follow-up because we've got questions about this from our fans too. We've seen the Philadelphia Eagles kind of function with how they operate their salary cap, where they put all these void years on their contracts, right? They have minimum salaries early in the deal. They have option bonuses. It's basically just all mechanisms to push money down the road, right? And that's how they can pay Landon Dickerson. They can pay Devontae Smith. They can pay A.J. Brown. They can pay Jalen Hurts. They can pay all these guys and keep them on the roster. The Giants don't operate that way. They try to keep their contracts flat. They don't like to push money. I know one criticism down in Dallas of the Cowboys is that I frankly don't think it's a legitimate criticism, and I'll let you get into that the Cowboys don't operate like the Eagles do, where they don't push money down the road. But then I look at the Cowboys books and I see, hold on a second, Dak Prescott has $40 million on the cap next year when he's not even on the roster. Zach Martin has $15 million next year when he's not even on the roster. So are the Cowboys trying to operate more like the Giants, where they're trying to keep the contracts flat, not have so much dead money? Are they more willing to push dead money? Because that's one way where you can kind of figure out, I think, to kind of solve that really tough, to your point, salary cap equation. But again, you're going to get burned down the road in situations like that too.
Which is funny, John, because the Cowboys have been criticized heavily for pushing money down the road.
They had to let DeMarcus Ware, a Hall of Famer, leave because they pushed too much money down the road.
Right. And look at Zach Martin right now. He's in the final year, but they've pushed money to next year for him. This year, by the way, with Ezekiel Elliott, he's counting $8 million in dead money for letting him go last year.
Oh, wow.
And the reason they did it was because of salary cap complications. If his base salary last year wasn't $10 million, he'd have played for this team, right? So he ends up going to New England, and what did he play for? $3 million. Well, Michael Irvin taught me long ago, I said, why would a guy take a pay cut, not to stay here, but he'll take a pay cut to go play for Cleveland? And he goes, guys won't take a pay cut in their own locker room. They don't want to face their own players with a pay cut. They'll go somewhere else and take a pay cut.
All psychological,
Mickey.
in
their locker room.
All psychological. You're right.
And you know what, Michael, for all his faults or whatever, his common sense is pretty good, and he's exactly right. So again, they've pushed. Next year, if those guys aren't on the team, there's a whole bunch of dead money that they're going to have to account for. So they've done that. The key thing is, and look what's happened in Jacksonville. When you can sign all these unrestricted free agents to exorbitant amounts, if your quarterback's still on his rookie deal, but once you got to pay the quarterback, then all of a sudden it's like, oh my gosh! And I saw where the owner, Shah Khan, is that how I say it?
You got it.
He said, we can't do business like this in free agency. We can't get addicted to free agency anymore. Well, why? Well, he just signed his quarterback to a $55 million a year contract.
That's right.
So, people don't understand the workings of that salary cap, and then it's easy to say, yeah, just pay them. Well, okay, but you can't pay everybody and that have good enough depth to be able to survive. And let me give you an example last year. So they lose Trayvon Diggs, right? 3 games into the season, torn ACL. So their 3 top corners at that point, once Jordan Lewis got back, Deron Bland and Stephon Gilmore. They go into the last game of the year. Gilmore injures his shoulder, and it was injured to the point that 5 days after the season was over, he had surgery. They were willing to try to play him with that harnessed shoulder instead of using the next guy up, because the next guy up probably wasn't any better than Gilmore with his shoulder harnessed.
Mm-hmm.
So again, if you don't have enough depth to counter some of those injuries, where are you at? And so that really hurt them in the playoff game. So I think they understood that we really got to work on the depth, but what's got to happen is we got to have young guys step up. If you look at their last, 3 or 4 second-round picks, they need those guys to be players this year, to be able to fill spots that guys left. Sam Williams, second-round pick. He's going into his 3rd year. They lose Armstrong. They lose, the veteran defensive end who was a rotation guy.
Fowler, Dante Fowler.
Yeah, Fowler. So it's basically DeMarcus Lawrence. If Mike Zimmer wants to use Micah Parsons more at linebacker than defensive end, then who's the next defensive end? Well, it's got to be Sam Williams. So they need him to step up. The linebacker position. They got short on linebackers last year. And so to try to survive, they were trying to play these big safeties as a linebacker. Well, they got burned in the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
And give you an example of what happened. So Green Bay ended up running on them for 143 yards, 3 touchdowns. Buffalo, I think it was 170. Arizona had 200 and some yards rushing on them because they ran out of linebackers once Leighton Vander Esch got hurt. So they tried to be cute, right? So Parsons is doing his podcast at the Super Bowl. And he has Jordan Love, the Packers quarterback, as a guest. And Parsons, and I'm paraphrasing here, but Parsons basically goes, well, what did you guys see to take advantage running the ball against us in the playoff game?
You were small.
And Jordan Love goes, well, I don't like to talk, about other people's deficiencies. He goes, but we knew going into the game that last year we had a really good regular season game running on you. And I think they ran for, top of my head, 170 yards. And he goes in, and then we saw that, you're playing a safety at linebacker. And we're figuring, well, we need to run on them. And so they did. So again, they didn't have enough depth at linebacker to sustain one of their starters at linebacker getting lost for the season. And he's not back again this year. So again, at some point now this year, they need DeMarvion Overshawn, their 3rd-round pick from last year, to step up and be a player. He injured his ACL in training camp. They had big plans for him. He was looking good. And then you lose him. Well, then they didn't have another linebacker to help out. So again, to go back to where we started, you do need some depth, and you can't just pay the top 3 guys all the money and think, okay, we can put this team together again. So their improvement this year has to come from within. And I know that sounds like, that's what the company line is, but that's the deal. There's no other way because they didn't have money to go explore in free agency and sign high-priced players to either lose the guys they did or keep from losing the guys they did.
Mickey, speaking of guys who have to step up and get the job done, I look at that offensive line, potentially 2 new starters in Brock Hoffman at center and Tyler Guyton, the first-round draft choice at left tackle.
Or maybe Cooper Beebe at center. Who knows?
Maybe. I mean, how much trepidation are the Cowboys having right now, considering that these 2 guys are going to be thrown in there probably in week 1?
Yeah, and we'll start with Guyton. You know, he's moving from right tackle to left tackle. What gives him a little bit of hope is the fact that at Oklahoma, the quarterback was left-handed. So the right side was more important. So he played the right tackle position. They need him to develop. Now, they're not going to just hand him the job. They've got some guys that they've had that, you know, it's like, okay, let's see what you can do. The worry for me is, you know, in the offseason, at left tackle, since Guyton was playing second team, again, they didn't just want to hand him the starting job, it's Chuma Edoga. And I would be fearful to have to start the season with him as my starter at left tackle. So really need Guyton to step up. Now, the center position, Brock Hoffman played there little bit last year, and he did fine. He didn't hurt him, let's put it that way. We'll see what Connor Beebe can do. The third-round draft choice that they're moving from guard to center, he seems to be a pretty darn good player, but again, we'll see. So that's one of those things that they've got to answer in training camp. But you're right. But they didn't have enough money to keep Biotish because of all the things we just talked about. They couldn't pay what he got paid. They couldn't pay Tyron Smith what he got paid, for goodness sakes. And you know, with the Jets guaranteeing him basically $12 million. You know, everybody points out that contract, and it's like, well, he's got incentives. He has already earned incentives, so that counts against your cap. Right. If he doesn't play that many games, then you get a refund the next year. So that whatever, you know, it looked like he got guaranteed, it was basically a $12 million a year contract. And they were like, you know what, at some point we got to move on. And so, but you're right. And again, that's what I tell people. This is what we're going to training camp for, to find out if they can put that offensive line back together. But if you look at it, you got an all-pro at right guard in Martin. The left guard, Tyler Smith, he played awfully well, so you can count on him. And then the right tackle, Terrence Steele, you know, he was getting ready to have a Pro Bowl season until he got hurt in 2022, torn ACL, and their running game went down the pits after they lost him. Ezekiel Elliott, before those last 5 games without Steele there, was averaging 4.2 yards a carry. When they lost Steele, his average for the rest of the season ended up 3.8 total. So he dropped to 3.2. So again, Steele's a pretty good player. So if you got 3 really good guys, do I need 2 more Pro Bowlers on there to have 5? You know, and people hate me when I go back and tell them, go back and look at the Cowboys in the 90s. You know, the highest draft pick until Larry Allen got there in 94 and a second-round pick were third-round picks. Eric Williams, Mark Stepnoski. The rest of them were kind of throw-in guys, free agents, guys that were tossed, that came out of the USFL. So at some point, you got to develop guys. You can't have 5 Pro Bowlers on your offensive line.
No question, Mickey. Honestly, I only have one more question on the offense because I think, you know, the wide receivers are good. Dak, you know, is good. Jake Ferguson is good. I'm just curious what you think is going to happen at the running back position here. Is Ezekiel Elliott going to be more of your short yardage goal line guy with like Rico Dowdle taking early down work? How do you think they're going to work that, or is it going to be an open competition? How do you see that running back position kind of getting sorted out by the time the regular season starts?
Yeah, I think it's open competition. And again, I hate to sound redundant, but that's what we're going to training camp to find out. You know, can Rico Dowdle take over and be more of the guy, and then you kind of put Zeke in different places. Now, Zeke's not going to get 200, 250 carries, and that's not what they're signing him for. But what if he is the most effective guy in short yardage? What if he's running the ball well? And even on third down, and he's not a third down back, but who's your best blocker picking up blitzes in passing situation? Well, it's already Zeke. Mm-hmm. Somebody's going to have to prove it's not him. So this idea that they've thrown out there, it's by committee. I'm going, okay, I got 7 guys on the committee. I only can keep 3 active game day. Maybe 4 fullback is counted as one of the 4. But who's going to earn that job? Well, we don't know that. I don't know if they know that. They got to see, because you know what happens in the off season. All those practices, they might as well be playing flag football.
Yeah.
So nothing's proven, especially for running backs, right? You got to see running backs play when they get tackled, and then what do? So to me, right now, it's Zeke, it's Rico Dowdle, and then we'll see in what order and how they use them as training camp goes along.
All right, Mickey, I want to ask you about defensively. There are 2 graybeards. Obviously, DeMarcus Lawrence seems like he's been around forever. He is still there, still playing well. I don't know how much gas he has left. And then Eric Kendricks, who after Minnesota and the Chargers and now the Cowboys, he's on his 3rd team in 3 years. So despite his tackle production, because he always has 100-something plus tackles every year, he doesn't seem to be a very desired commodity these last couple of years, as 2 teams have allowed him to walk away.
Well, we'll start here. He had his best years playing in Minnesota under Mike Zimmer. Mm-hmm. So Mike Zimmer knows him inside and out. And I'll guarantee you he sanctioned the signing. And Zimmer was the reason Kendricks took the lesser money than he was getting from San Francisco, I believe it was, to come to Dallas and play for the Cowboys, because he wanted to play for Zim, which was funny because before he left, he was kind of at odds with Mike, right? And now it's like, well, yeah, that was then, but, I understand, I've matured, whatever guys do, right? So we'll see, but they need him to be a player. They need him to take command of defense at middle linebacker, because they really don't have another guy. Damone Clark did a nice job, but again, I think he's more of an edge linebacker on either side than he is the middle guy. So, and then they got to have a third guy, and that's why I think at times, I don't know what Micah Parsons thinks about it, but to me, his value to this team is playing linebacker, and then maybe being a pass rusher in definite pass rushing situations, but not in every down defensive end like they tried to do last year. And I know he got the sacks, but there's more to playing defensive end than getting sacks. And just go look at the career of the guy you mentioned earlier, DeMarcus Lawrence. Mm-hmm. His sack totals haven't been astounding, but he's been one of the more valuable players on this team because of his ability at defensive end to set the edge and play the runs.
Last one from me, Mickey, and this is kind of a big picture defensive question. You already mentioned Mike Zimmer. How do you think this defense is going to convert over to Zim's system, given what they've done under Dan Quinn over the past couple of years, and kind of a micro topic inside that bigger question? I kind of laughed when Micah Parsons got interviewed in minicamp, and he's like, I want to play one way, Zim wants to play another, and we're going to meet somewhere in the middle. And I'm sitting there like, I've never met Mike Zimmer. Mike Zimmer doesn't seem like the meet-in-the-middle type of guy to me. So how do you think this whole defense, including Micah, will work with Mike Zimmer, who I still think, by the way, is a really good defensive coach? I think he's great. But how do you think it's going to work with the talent the Cowboys have?
Well, unlike you, I think I've known Mike Zimmer forever. Like back in 1979 when I was covering the Missouri Tigers football for the Columbia Tribune, Zim was a first-year graduate assistant coach. We ran into each other back then, right? And then all of a sudden Zim shows up with the Cowboys in 1994 as a defensive assistant, right? And it's like, "Oh, it's you again." He goes, "What are you doing here?" And it's like, oh, okay, well, what goes on in life comes back around. So he's stubborn, and he doesn't take any BS from anybody. And I'll guarantee you, not from Micah Parsons either. And so it'll be interesting to see if he decides, because he's already said, I play a 4-3 defense. And if teams are lining up in 2 tight ends or a running formation with a fullback, he goes, I got to have that third linebacker on the field. I can't be out there playing, and he hasn't said it in so many words, like with a skinny-ass safety, masquerading as a linebacker.
Oh, he wants to use those words, though, I guarantee it.
and I said, and it's like, they really don't have another proven linebacker. They would like Overshawn to be that other weak side linebacker, but they haven't seen it, hadn't played it down in the NFL. Well, that's Micah Parsons. To me, if you go back and look at his tape at Penn State, when what caught my eye was him playing linebacker and how he was able to read gaps and shoot the hole and make tackles in the running game. And I think, playing defensive end, he sort of got away from that, right? Lawrence Taylor, who everybody wanted to compare him to, he was more than just a pass rusher. This guy was an all-around linebacker if anybody out there is old enough to remember him playing. Mm-hmm. And so, to me, for Parsons to be the best complete player, it's got to start at linebacker and then move into pass rush situations or blitz him in spots from the linebacker position. But one of the priorities has to be stopping the run. In all 6 games that they lost last year, the opponent ran for, I think I figured, more than 130 yards against them, and 2 of them for more than 200 yards, right? So if you can't do a better job of stopping the run against the good teams, then you got no shot. And their 6 losses were to 5 teams with winning record, the exception being the Cardinals early in the season.
Good stuff, Mickey. I'm good.
Mickey, good stuff, my friend. I guess I'll close with this then, real quick, rapid fire. Is this team, you think, significantly worse off from a talent perspective this year as compared to last year's team, or do you think that's overblown a little bit?
I think it's overblown because they saw what the Cowboys lost and didn't gain. But if you look at what they have, they still have one of the best wide receivers in the NFL, assuming CD's there. They have the quarterback that finished second in quarterback rating last year. He was first in touchdown passes. He's still pretty darn good. And when everybody wants to throw up, well, he's only 2-5 in the playoffs. Well, guess what? 3 of the 5 playoff losses, the opponent scored at least 30 points. So there's a lot of quarterbacks out there. Go check their playoff record. When they had to score more than 30 to win, their record wasn't very good. So, again, you've got a top quarterback, a top wide receiver, a top guard. You got DeMarcus Lawrence playing defense. If Trayvon Diggs comes back anywhere close to where he was when he was a Pro Bowler, and you got Deron Bland on the other side, a Pro Bowler, you got a lot of talent on this team still, even though you lost some guys. So I think it's not been measured. It's just overreaction to, well, you lost 11 guys, 9 of them were starters, and you didn't replace them. Well, okay. Well, we're going to training camp to find out if they can fill in the blanks with some younger guys that they sorely need to step up.
Mickey, great stuff, my friend. Enjoy the rest of your time up here in the Northeast, and have a safe trip out to Oxnard. We'll talk to you down the road.
Be well.
Okay, give me a call at training camp. I'll be there.
Absolutely. Thanks, Mickey. Mickey Spagnola, DallasCowboys.com. And it's funny, Paul, as we wrap up here our opponent previews. And again, folks, just remember, next week, 1 o'clock, Big Blue Kickoff Live.
Yes.
And we start narrowing in and focusing in on training camp. It'll be a lot of fun. We can start talking about practices, stuff happening. It'll be great. There's been such consistency at the top of this division over the past 4 or 5 years with Dallas and Philadelphia. I feel like with both of those franchises this year, for the first time in a while, there's a potential for some volatility.
Yeah, I said something the other day, and I'm glad you mentioned that because I said I think that the tightrope is starting to wobble a little in the NFC East.
I think both those teams are still very talented, but
they are.
See points of instability that can rock the boat.
I see that wobble, and I think the Giants are getting better. I don't know if the gap is closed. I don't think it's closed, but I think it's getting smaller. I do believe that. I do believe it'll be a much more competitive three-way tussle than it has been, and I don't know what to make of Washington. We had the Commanders.
I don't think any of us.
Yesterday.
I don't think any of us know what to make of.
They've had so many significant changes.
All new players, all new coaching staff. How the hell are you supposed to know what they're going to do?
Now, they themselves, listening to George Wallace from WTOP yesterday, who's been covering that franchise for a long time, seem to have major concerns about their offensive line and their secondary.
They should. I think those are their two biggest weaknesses.
Well,
I agree with that.
And those are weaknesses that will significantly hamstring you during the course of the season.
They can be easily exploited. That is correct.
Exactly.
Especially against the defensive fronts that the Eagles, Cowboys, and Giants are throwing out there. Oof.
Right. So I'm still of the opinion that Washington, despite all the changes, has still a ways to catch up to the other three.
And you don't want to put too much on a rookie quarterback. Not many
you
people
know how
have
I
the
feel
rookie
about that?
quarterbacks of C.J. Stroud. Nobody has C.J. Stroud.
I never like seeing those rookie quarterbacks start right out of the gate. I'm just not in favor.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think it could go either way for both these teams, right? Like, for Dallas, do they get Dak Prescott re-signed? Does Mike Zimmer work out as defensive coordinator? What happens with McCarthy? Like, we just don't know. For the Eagles, I think a lot's on the coordinators, right? You're looking at Fangio and you're looking at Kellen Moore. Can they solidify, which, to be quite honest with you, was a disaster last year, where they changed defensive coordinators midstream. The offensive coordinator they let go after the season. They really had no plan for the blitz last year, which is one of the reasons the Giants had so much success against them late in the year. So, can they figure these things out? Dallas, to Mickey's point, they're relying on a lot of young guys. They could have two either rookies or second-year players starting on the offensive line. On defense, they're going to need a lot on a Marshawn Nealon, the second-round pick. Demarion Overshown, who was drafted last year in the third round but hurt his knee in the offseason, is basically a rookie. They have a lot of young guys they're going to count on, and can they maintain that? We'll have to see. I agree. I think the Giants have gotten better, and I think Dallas and Philly have both. I would consider Dallas's peak to be this past season and Philly's peak to be from 2 years ago, obviously when they got the Super Bowl, right?
That's fair.
I don't feel like either of those teams are as good as they were when they were at their peak. Where they are, I'm not sure, but I don't think they're as good as they are when they were at their peak. We'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, I think they're wobbling just a little bit, which means if the Giants can throw a couple of haymakers, maybe they can make some noise.
Well, take advantage of it, right?
You
got to. You finally beat the Eagles into last year. At that point, unfortunately, the Eagles weren't playing for a ton. They rested guys, so I can't take that game that seriously
I understand.
The 17th game of the year. So when you play Dallas in week 4 this year, right? Week 3 is Cleveland, week 4 is Dallas? Or is week 3 Dallas, week 4 Cleveland?
No, Cleveland's first.
Okay, so Cleveland's
first.
So Cleveland's week 3, Dallas is week 4 then. Can you
we have it here,
get that figured? Oh, yeah, I do have the schedule right for me. Duh. Sorry. September 26th, Dallas. Yes, and Browns are the 22nd. So go out. Because, Paul, we've talked about it last year. I don't think the Giants have beaten Dak Prescott yet when he started a game.
No, they haven't.
And frankly, the games have not been close.
No.
Come out on that Thursday night, even if you don't manage to win, can it be a one-score game in the fourth quarter for me?
Usually, though, to be honest, because either the Giants' offense was so horrible in the first half that by halftime you knew the game was pretty much over, or because even if the defense was able to keep it competitive at halftime, the Dallas offense eventually would simply wear the Giants down, and then the Giants offense never woke up. Well, they got smashed in the fourth.
And whenever Dallas's whole key to their last couple years was to get a lead, right? Get a lead and then rush the quarterback. And they would get a lead against the Giants, and they'd rush they'd rush the quarterback against the Giants. They couldn't stand up front against all those twists and stunts. Pardon me. And then it's game over.
That's it.
Then game over.
Giants, as soon as the Giants would get down by 2 scores against Dallas, the Cowboys would wear them down, and they were shot.
It was game over. So let's avoid that in week 4 this year.
Be great.
Can we do that? All right, thanks for joining us on Friday's edition of Big Blue Kickoff Live, everybody. Don't forget, for Giants tickets, you can take your fans to the next level with the season ticket membership, giants.com/tickets. Download Giants TV, the Giants connected TV streaming app. It's free. Apple TV, Roku, Amazon Fire TV, Giants mobile app. And finally, Paul, you should walk this. If people are going to run this, you should walk it. The Giants are hosting a 5K Racing Kids Run presented by Quest on Saturday, September 7th, 9 a.m. at MetLife Stadium. Net proceeds will benefit the Giants Foundation. All participants will receive a commemorative T-shirt after the race. Stay for a post-race festival with appearances by Giants legends and a live DJ. Register now at giants.com/5K.
Good stuff.
You're going to have so much stress that weekend heading into week 1, Paul. You could actually probably use that to get some of your stress out. Dude, you think I'm kidding?
No, you know me. I'm high intensity, high stress.
So I think maybe the 5K might. It's only 3.2 miles. You can walk that in your sleep.
Oh, I know. 3.2. That's ridiculously easy.
And your speed walking is probably the equivalent of some other people jogging.
That's also true. I've actually been in some walks where some people jogged, and I had no trouble keeping up with them.
I love it. All right, for Paul Dottino, I'm John Schmeelk. Again, 1 o'clock for Big Blue Kickoff Live next week. Pearson, have a great weekend. Everybody else have a great weekend as well. And we will see you on Monday as the marathon begins.
Getting ready to take on spring? Make your first move with the reliable performance and power of Steel battery tools. From hedge trimmers and mowers to string trimmers and more, right now you can save $50 on select battery tool sets. Real Steel. Offer valid on select AK system sets through June 16, 2024. See participating retailer for details.
Is your body trying to tell you something? Tiredness, lack of focus, trouble sleeping, bloating? These things can affect your quality of life. That's where Symbiotica can help. The supplement brand is made with quality ingredients, free of seed oils and shady additives, and they taste delicious. The time to feel better starts now at Symbiotica.com. Use the code IHEART to get 20% off and free shipping on your subscription order. That's CYMBIOTIKA.com. That's Symbiotica.com.